Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name again is Lori and I want to start by giving a huge thank you to everyone that took the time to watch, comment, and like my last video, which is actually my first official video on the channel where I shared my journey to meeting my husband at 38 after spending 8 years single. I'm going to make this an entire series. There are a lot of videos to come and this channel is not just about my single experience. I'm going to share everything from more on motherhood. I have an almost 3-year-old and I'll also be going into a lot of my interest and of course wedding talk, because that is not only a passion, but I plan our entire weddings. Stick around for all of those things and you never know, one day you may need some of that wedding planning advice. I actually learned everything I know about weddings while I was single. I do plan to prioritize talking about my single journey because when I was single, I didn't feel like there were enough creators that I related to. I felt a lot of them were a lot younger than me and I wish that there were ones that were my age that I can hear their stories and their experience for encouragement. There's going to be a lot of videos. I have a lengthy list. It's actually my notebook where I've been jotting down all of my notes and topics that I'm planning to talk about. So subscribe and follow along. In this video, I'm going to give a glimpse into my dating journey and what that was like for me. This is going to have to be multiple videos because there was a lot that I experienced in that journey. I do want to give a little bit of an overview. Not only that, how I was able to reach a place of contentment, which I'm going to go deeper into in my next video. In my last video, I gave a glimpse into my single season and at 30 said that I was just going to be single for a few years after a long-term relationship ended. And that ended up turning into 8 years of being single, which I did not expect. Not only was I afraid that I wasn't going to meet someone, I was also afraid, am I ever going to become a mom? While I was dating a little here and there, I didn't have any prospects that were leading me to believe that I was getting any closer to finding my husband. And what's scary about that, if you don't have any prospects, the possibility of becoming a mom seems just as far away as finding love. As each year passed, I started to feel that I was getting out of the window of being able to get pregnant. While I absolutely have faith that God can do anything, reality is that it can become more difficult to get pregnant when you are of a certain age. And so I was starting to get concerned if it will happen for me. I was realistic knowing that if I met someone, you still want to allow time for courtship and getting to know each other and dating. So if I were to meet someone, even in the next few years, I still had to add on time for us to actually know each other. And so it just felt like, is motherhood going to happen for me realistically? I tried to stay positive. At that time, the biblical story that I held on to was of Sarah. I used to always think about Sarah and that God was able to do it for her, even though she doubted. She even laughed when God said that she was going to have a baby. I felt like Sarah, and I would always say, God, just keep me from making it Ishmael. I don't want to step out of your timing. I want to wait for you. However, I'm getting older. You see how much older I'm getting. So I'm waiting, but I don't know if this is going to happen. I had faith, but I was also looking at the clock. I was 34. I went to my gynecologist and talked to her and said that I did want to have children one day. I wasn't in a relationship, but I just wanted to know what my options were. And at that time, she said that I don't have to worry about it. I'm still young. However, just 2 years later, when I went back, the conversation was very different. Not only did she suggest that I consider freezing my eggs, she gave me a pamphlet when I left with more information on how to go about that process. I left in tears. I couldn't believe that I was in a position where I was going to have to consider freezing my eggs. And not only that, I needed to think fast because she told me that I only had so long before that wasn't even an option for me either. I would talk to women that were in relationships and married and they were hoping to conceive and they talked about the difficulty of that, not realizing that I related. The only difference was I wasn't in a relationship, but I also was concerned about, am I going to be able to get pregnant one day? What was hard about that was not only did I not have a companion, I didn't have a child either. I was struggling with wondering if either of those things were going to happen for me. So while I was experiencing the pressure of time, I was also putting myself out there and dating. My experiences were often the topic of conversation in the office. My coworkers and I would always recap my dates and my friends and I would recap as well. And while there were many laughs, there are also some frustrations that came with that because dating is hard. It can be extremely discouraging and exhausting. It can take a lot to continue to put yourself out there, especially if your dating experience is not always at a high. Although it was not always easy, I continued to have faith and put myself out there, hoping that eventually I would meet someone that was worth it. My husband and I had a very colorful dating life. We had so many different stories that when we met, we both exchanged. They actually led us to being featured on a podcast that you can find linked in my bio. It's called You Had Me at Hello. You can find it on any streaming platform like Apple Music or Spotify. We're episode 3, Always a Bridesmaid. We share our journey to meeting each other, including our dating experience. It sounds more like an audiobook where you're able to hear our love story narrated by Tay Diggs. So I will be sharing more here, and you can also hear more on that podcast. I experienced everything from guys that were good on paper, not so much when it came to romantically. I felt like sometimes guys put a lot into their work life and lacked what would make someone a great partner. For guys that were inconsistent, and then there were those red flags that I missed, and sometimes, to be very honest with you, ignored. There was a guy that mapped out our entire life together before we even went on one date. A great conversation with someone, or I should say they had a great conversation with me because they didn't give me a minute to say anything. Talked on the phone a few times. At one point, I put the phone down, made something to eat, came back, and he had never stopped talking. I found myself having really great first dates with guys, but they wouldn't always lead any further than that. It felt like we were having great conversation and banter, but we weren't really getting deep and having serious conversations where you really get to know someone. As a result, after a few dates, things would just fizzle out. I was looking for a deeper relationship, specifically someone that was looking for one as well, that would lead to marriage, not just a partner or a boyfriend, but a husband, and someone that was ready to start a family. Dating would have been a lot easier if all I was looking for was just a partner or companionship. I found it very difficult to find someone that was on the same page that I was. And if you did, that didn't mean that they were the person that you felt like you can see yourself having those things with. It felt like the odds of finding someone that I had shared values with, that I felt compatible with, and wanted the same things was virtually impossible. When I would talk to people about my dating experience, I would always say that dating is not like going to the grocery store and getting milk. You don't just go in and find your partner. It takes time. It can be very difficult, especially if you're waiting for the right one, not just someone that you can see yourself maybe being happy with. I wanted someone that I truly felt like was meant for me. I remember years ago watching Girlfriends, and Joan actually said to Brock, "I want more than good enough." And that was exactly what I felt. I didn't want good enough. I wanted the right person for me. And I was willing to wait for that, even if it felt like they didn't exist. Based on my dating experiences, I was definitely taking a chance. Dating also came with accepting the fact that I could come across a lot of great guys, but that didn't mean that they were the right person for me. And it was accepting that I might not be the perfect person for someone either. That was one of the hardest lessons that I had to learn while I was dating. Rejection, being accepted, or like you are good enough is tough. If you are dating actively and you know that you're a catch and you actually may like someone and they don't feel the same way, is extremely difficult. But in my case, it was a necessary part of my dating experience. I went through a season of rejection that led me to seek validation. It wasn't so much that I was looking for someone in that season. I was just looking for someone to say, yes, I think that you are enough. After experiencing rejection, it made me feel like, am I good enough? I started to second guess myself. And that was important for me to go through because it led me to seek validation within myself and not seek it from anyone that I was dating. I took a step back from dating so that I could find my own worth and value. What I didn't know at the time was how important that was going to be for me to get into a relationship that I needed more than anything, which was a relationship with myself. I spent time pouring into myself by dating myself and started to take myself out. If I didn't have plans with friends, I had a standing date with myself every single Friday. I would go to my favorite restaurant, I would go right across the street to see a movie, and I would be home in enough time to just relax. I went to countless concerts. I loved going to see live music. I went to plays, museums. I even had a favorite hotel that I used to love to go to and read. In the summer, I would love to ride a bike through the city and just wander around. If there was a fest going on, I would go. At the time, my friends were spread out around the country and sometimes they just weren't available. Family aren't in the same state, so I didn't always have someone to go out with. And I didn't let that stop me. One time I went out for tacos and it was a little late. It was a weekday and I had to go to work the next morning. I remember trying to hurry up and eat my food, and I remember thinking I have to rush back home, and I stopped myself and went, rush back home for what? I don't have to get back home. I don't have a child that I have to pick up or any reason I have to rush back. I can stay out as long as I want to. I ended up just staying, relaxing, enjoying myself. They had music. And when I left, I realized my life isn't always going to be like this, and I need to really appreciate these days. It completely changed my perspective and allowed me to learn how to love being in that season. And now that I am a wife and a mom, I am so thankful that I had that time. It allowed me to have so much freedom I don't have in the same way now. Not only that, I don't look back and wonder or wish that I did more with that time. I have so much that I got out of my system because I lived, I enjoyed myself. Now I can do some of the same things I used to love to do with my son and my husband, but I'm grateful I first did them by and with myself. That season also helped me with making better choices with who I was dating because I wasn't lonely. I was enjoying myself and I wasn't rushing to find someone to fill my time because I was busy on my own. I was also more aware of the peace that someone was bringing into my life. I was no longer seeking validation from anyone else. I had learned how to validate myself and enjoy time with myself. Now, as encouraging as that may sound, do not be fooled. As happy as I was to have gotten to that place, I was still tired. I started my single journey at 30 and I was inching closer to 40. Yes, I got to a place of contentment, but I'd also gotten to a place where I started to just accept maybe this isn't going to happen for me. In addition to wondering if I'll ever be a mom, will I have a partner to share my life with, I was also tired of just what comes with being a single person. That is something people do not talk a lot about. Being single most of the time is associated with the fact that you don't have a partner. What people don't talk a lot about is how difficult it can be when you are solely reliant on yourself. Having a partner means that you have support that you may not have when you're single. I had a great friend circle and I'm close with my family, but there's nothing like having a partner that's there for you, especially when you most need it. When my mom started having health issues in 2019, there was a time when I went to visit her. She had a medical emergency in the middle of the night. I had to call the paramedics. I was really shaken up. And I remember in that moment wishing that I had someone that I can call, which I did have friends that I could have absolutely have called, but I know that they had their own lives, some of which are married, and I didn't want to interrupt them. And it really made me feel I want someone in my life that is there for me. Not only that, I have been independent and self-sufficient for a very long time. And it can be hard making decisions for yourself, not having someone that you can talk to about the decisions that you're making and helping you with your thought process and being supportive and taking care of yourself financially. All those things can be really exhausting. Just like during my dating experience when I learned that I needed to validate myself instead of looking for validation from others, I learned that that season of feeling like I was on my own was important also because it taught me that I wasn't on my own. I learned how to rely on God, lean on God, feel God's presence more than ever during that season. There were times where I did feel lonely and I wish that I had someone there for me. I felt his comfort and I knew that I wasn't doing life by myself. While I desired it in the flesh and in the human form, I was able to feel it in the spirit and know that God was with me. I wasn't doing life by myself. He was there in my finances. He was there with my decision making. And I think that that time was such an important season so that I knew to go to God first. What I'm most appreciative about now that I am married is that even though I have a husband and we talk about everything, I still put God first in all of my decisions. By the time I was 38, I had gone through so much during my journey. Everything from talking to my doctor about my options of, am I ever going to be able to have a child if I one day meet someone, to putting myself out there dating, going through the discouragement that can come with that, learning how to love myself and enjoy time with myself, knowing that I was not alone, deepening my relationship with God. All were an important part of my journey and I didn't know it at the time, but now that I am married, understand that it was all necessary. They all shaped me and I would not change anything. By the time I met my husband, I was done with overthinking, overanalyzing. I didn't need validation. And most importantly, I was happy. So when I met my husband, I wasn't rushing, wasn't anxious. I wasn't acting out of fear or thinking that time was running out and I needed to hurry and meet someone. Instead, when I met him, I felt confirmation that my time had come to an end. I had met the person that I was praying for. It wasn't out of fear or desperation or timing. It was out of realizing this person is everything that I had been waiting for and wondering if they even existed. My church's Bible verse is Ephesians 3:20, and I always say that that is my husband. My husband is my Ephesians 3:20. He is more than I ever thought or imagined I could ever have. And as I mentioned in my last video, he sees me as the same. That was important to me while I was dating because I felt like I was meeting guys that weren't looking for the same thing. So it is an amazing feeling to have someone that is just as happy to have you as you are to have them. The only thing that I wish I did differently during my dating season was not spend time worrying. I wish that I had have let go of worry and focusing on the time that was passing and instead just enjoy that season because all seasons have to come to an end. Eventually got there. I wish that it didn't take me so long. I'm going to go a lot further into my dating experience and my journey. And as I mentioned, the next video will go more into how I found contentment because that is something that I hope that everyone can get to sooner than later. I know it's difficult, especially if you've been waiting for some time, but this is such a beautiful season. And being single is nothing to be ashamed of or to think that you are less worthy or valuable for. You are just as valuable single as you will be when you meet someone. While I will be sharing my journey and experience, I do not want anyone to make an idol out of marriage or relationship, something that I will admit at a point in time I did. It is beautiful. Every season of your life has beauty to it, and there is so much to appreciate in every season. So many memories and things that I can look back to that I appreciate so much. And while it was definitely difficult, it was not all bad. And being on this side is not a cakewalk either. Being married and being a mom has its own challenges. While it is an amazing experience, biggest gift that you can give yourself that I learned eventually is to learn how to be in love with your life before you meet someone. Because if you haven't gotten to that place when you meet them, you find that they're not able to give you the fulfillment, the peace, and the contentment that you're hoping for. That is something that has to come from within. Whenever I share my journey, I always have comments from people that wonder if there's something that they've done, if there's something that's wrong with them, and that's why it hasn't happened. And all that tells me is that you are on this journey to find love within yourself first and foremost. Because God's plan for your life is not to get married. As my husband said when we first met, it is to stay married. And that's gonna mean doing some work before you get there. And don't think the work's gonna stop. It will continue. But you wanna be in a place where you know your worth and your value so that you don't settle, wait for God's best, because you know you are worthy of it. I hope this video was encouraging, and I'm really excited to continue to share. When I was single, I went through some dark seasons, and I remember, although I have lots of interest, what I needed the most was encouragement. And so if I can be that for even one person, that means a lot to me. But it won't always be deep and serious here either. I love to laugh. I'm a very lighthearted person, and I have a lot of interest. So I'm excited to share all of that. Right now, I want to focus on talking to singles and giving encouragement because I know how important that is. It's important to me because I was once there. So until my next video, enjoy where you are in this season. You're not going to get this time back. And trust me when I say, when you become a wife and when you become a mom, if that is a wish for you, your life is going to change, and so is your time. I am so happy for every nap that I took when I was single, because God knows I am not getting the same level of sleep that I had back then. Also, do not settle because time is passing. I have made mistakes, but I'm so grateful that God didn't let some of those dating experiences and relationships work out, because He had so much more in store for me. And marriage will test your choices, so make sure that you are choosing wisely. Also, God's timing is never too late. Trust in His timing and the work that He is doing in that season that you are in. Let me know in the comments what some of the challenges that you're experiencing in this season of singleness is. Also, if you're currently dating, what that journey is like for you and how you're staying encouraged while waiting. Remember that if you are in this journey, you are not alone. And be sure to subscribe. My next video is going to take on how I was able to find contentment in my single season.